how did we get to this point, and how bad is the situation?
Well, the situation is pretty tough. We got to this point because there's been about 2 months now of extended extreme heat in China, and it's not going away for the next couple of days. Forecasts in Chengdu and Sichuan call for 40-degree temperatures through Wednesday, and it really doesn't start to cool off and rain until next weekend. And so that's basically done two things. It's increased power demand because everyone's using air conditioning. So Sichuan said their peak power demand is jumped 25% from last year's levels. And at the same time, it's drying up China's rivers. And Sichuan is very reliant on hydropower. About 75% of its installed capacity is just these giant dams along the Yangtze River and its tributaries. And these reservoir levels in these dams are falling. They're plummeting. It's about 1.2 billion cubic meters right now from about 5.2 billion last year. That means hydropower generation is down about 51%, and there's just not enough power left. And so they're continuing to cut power off to factories for the rest of this week to make sure that there's enough for people to stay cool in their homes.
Dan, you mentioned that this is extreme weather. It's an extreme situation, but could this prompt the Sichuan government and the national government to make some changes and try to diversify energy sources given these unprecedented elements right now?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that they've tried to do is they've maximized the amount of electricity imports into Sichuan. Sichuan is normally a big electricity exporter because it has so much hydropower. But one thing China has talked about a lot this year is improving the interconnectedness of its grids so that, if a situation like this comes up again, they'd be able to bring excess power from other provinces that have more coal power plants and bring that into Sichuan. That's one area I think you're going to see. Another one might be that China has, a massive solar industry, and putting floating solar panels on some of these reservoirs is a nice way of pairing, the two renewable sources, so that when you have these extremely sunny days, you get at least a little bit of solar power out of the reservoirs while your hydropower levels are falling.
But Dan, what are the flow-on effects if we do see that unfulfilled demand then flow on to coal and gas, particularly as we've seen power station gas inventory is quite low as well?
Yeah, we're earlier this year, because of COVID and because there was actually quite a rainy start to the year, hydropower generation was soaring. It was up about 17% in the first half of the year. That meant that China's coal plants could reduce their generation and save up coal for later on. But that has completely reversed in the last couple of weeks. Coal use is up 15% now in August. And, China still has a pretty healthy level of coal because they've been boosting mining to a record level. But if this keeps up, we're going to be getting into winter, which is, peak heating season in China. And if China has to go back out onto the foreign market to buy coal and gas, that's going to make things worse for everybody, especially in Europe, where they're already facing tight levels.